There is something you have never said out loud, not because you forgot the words, not because the moment never came. You have had the moments, plenty of them. Someone crossed a line, someone dismissed you, someone took something that was not theirs to take, and you stood there, completely composed, completely functional, and completely hollowed out from the inside. From the outside, you look steady, measured, even mature, the kind of person others describe as calm under pressure. But there is a pressure, and it has been building for a very long time. Not in dramatic episodes, not in outbursts or confrontations, in silence, in stillness, in the particular exhaustion of someone who has learned to swallow fire and smile while it burns. You have never lost control, and that might be the most costly thing about you. Anger is supposed to move. That is its biological purpose. It rises, it signals, it protects. It says, something is wrong here. It is not destructive by nature. It is directional, a force designed to orient a person toward what matters, to draw a line, to preserve something worth preserving. But there is a kind of person for whom anger does not move like that. For them, it stills, it turns inward, it becomes something closer to weather than emotion, a pressure system that never fully breaks, circling, accumulating, never releasing. Psychologists have long observed this pattern in people who, early in life, learned that expressing anger was unsafe. Not physically unsafe necessarily, socially unsafe, relationally unsafe, the kind of unsafe that means if I show this, I will lose something I cannot afford to lose. And so it gets buried, quietly, methodically, with great skill. So much skill, in fact, that after years of practice, the person begins to believe they are simply not an angry person. They call themselves patient, easygoing, conflict-averse. And in a way, they are all of those things. But underneath those descriptions lives something older, something unaddressed, something that has been politely folded and refolded until it no longer resembles the original shape. The origin of this is almost never dramatic. It rarely begins with a single event. It begins with an atmosphere, a family environment, a classroom, a church, a culture in which anger, particularly in certain bodies, certain genders, certain roles, was treated as a moral failure. The child who cried from anger was told they were being dramatic. The adolescent who pushed back was told they were disrespectful. The girl who raised her voice was called difficult. The boy who showed hurt beneath his fury was shamed for softness. Over time, the lesson solidified. Anger is not an emotion to express. It is an emotion to manage, to contain, to transform into something more socially acceptable before anyone can see it. Attachment researchers have noted that children who grow up in environments where emotional expression is unpredictably received, sometimes welcomed, sometimes punished, learn to suppress the emotions most likely to provoke rejection. Anger, with its visible urgency, its inability to be politely disguised, becomes the first emotion to go underground. What remains is a carefully constructed exterior, agreeable, accommodating, reliable, the kind of person who does not cause problems, who absorbs inconvenience without comment, who says it is fine when it is not fine, not because they are dishonest, because honesty at some point felt like too great a risk. There is a particular loneliness in this, not the loneliness of isolation, the loneliness of being surrounded by people who believe they know you, while the most essential part of your interior life remains perpetually unwitnessed. You become fluent in the emotions that are easy to share. Warmth, enthusiasm, even sadness in the right proportions. But anger, the sharp, clarifying, legitimate anger that arises when a need goes unmet or a boundary gets crossed, that one you translate. You soften it into disappointment. You intellectualize it into a calm explanation of why something bothered you. You delay it until it no longer feels current, then quietly release it into nothing. And the moment passes, and the thing that needed addressing stays unaddressed. This is the paradox that clinicians frequently observe. The more skilled a person becomes at suppressing anger, the more their relationships appear functional from the outside, and the more corroded they become from within. Because anger, when it cannot exit through the front door, does not disappear. It moves laterally. It becomes the flatness in your voice when you say you are fine, the subtle withdrawal after you have been let down, the jokes that carry more blade than warmth, the way you sometimes go very, very quiet in rooms where you used to speak freely. Jung described the parts of ourselves that we refuse to acknowledge as the shadow, not something sinister in origin, but something excluded, something that was not permitted entry into the acceptable version of ourselves. And what gets pushed into shadow does not dissolve. It deepens, it accumulates density, and it begins to influence behavior in ways that are rarely conscious and almost never straightforward. For people who cannot express anger, the shadow often speaks in deflection, in excessive accommodation that quietly breeds resentment, in passive withdrawal mistaken for introversion, in the strange exhaustion that follows interactions where nothing obviously went wrong. You leave conversations you handled perfectly and feel inexplicably depleted, not because anything happened, because something was prevented from happening, because some part of you spent the entire exchange managing a feeling that was never allowed to exist. Neuroscience suggests that suppressed emotional arousal does not simply reduce over time. The nervous system registers an unexpressed threat response as unresolved. The body holds it in the same tissue it would have used to move it. The shoulders, the jaw, the chest, the particular tightness people describe without being able to trace back to a source. This is not metaphor, it is physiology. The body keeps a record of what the mind refused to file. There is something else too, something subtler. People who cannot express anger often develop an almost preternatural sensitivity to the emotional states of others. Because when you grow up learning to read the room before you speak, to gauge whether this is a safe moment, whether this person can handle what you're carrying, you become extraordinarily attuned. You notice shifts in tone before others would. You sense tension before it surfaces. You anticipate needs before they are spoken. And the world often rewards this with words like empathetic, thoughtful, perceptive. What the world does not say is, you learned this in order to survive. That what looks like emotional intelligence is partly a survival mechanism developed by a child who needed to know which way the wind was blowing before they made a sound. Winnicott believed that the development of a true self requires an environment that can tolerate the child's full emotional range. Not just the pleasant emotions, the difficult ones. The ones that push back, the ones that say no, the ones that insist on being recognized. When an environment cannot hold those emotions safely, the child builds a false self, a functional, agreeable, capable surface self, and hides the rest. This is not dysfunction. At the time, it was genius. It was the only available solution. But solutions designed for childhood do not always serve adulthood well. And at some point, what protected you begins to cost you. The cost is rarely visible in a single moment. It accumulates in the gap between how a relationship looks and how it feels. In the growing distance between who you are around others and who you become when you're finally alone. In the Moments when someone close to you does something that genuinely wounds you, and you hear yourself calmly, graciously explaining why you understand. While somewhere deeper and older, a version of you that never learned the language of anger simply goes quiet again. There is a kind of grief in recognizing this. Not grief for a catastrophe, grief for a pattern, grief for all the moments you translated yourself into something easier to receive. All the times you swallowed something real because the room did not seem ready for it. All the relationships in which you were fully present as long as you kept certain rooms locked. You are not a passive person. You are not a weak person. You are not someone without depths or needs or legitimate grievances. You are someone who learned very early and very thoroughly that the full expression of your interior life was conditional. That love and belonging were safest when you stayed within certain emotional parameters. And so you stayed, expertly, quietly, at no small cost. The recognition is not the resolution. This is not that kind of story. There is no clean ending here, no instruction set waiting at the bottom of the page. Only the strange, uncomfortable clarity of seeing a pattern that has been running in the background of your life. For so long, it became the background. Somewhere along the way, you stopped noticing the anger because you became so efficient at managing it before it fully formed. But it is there. It has always been there. In the things you never said. In the rooms you quietly left. In the needs you learned not to have, or at least learned not to mention. In the version of yourself that emerges only in the silence after everyone else has gone, when there is no one left to accommodate, no tone left to read, and you sit with the particular weight of someone who has been performing composure for so long, they are no longer entirely sure where the performance ends. That is not a character flaw, it is a history. And histories, unlike characters, can be witnessed, they can be held. They do not always need to be fixed to begin, slowly, to loosen their grip. You have been very quiet for a very long time, and the silence has cost you more than anyone, including you, has been willing to count.